...2025 has started off with quite the bang for PC builders, with the launch of Nvidia's 50 series cards, AMD's 90 series cards, and so much more announced at CES 2025. Now, if you're looking to build a sub $1,000 computer right at the beginning of 2025, then this is the video for you, because it's incredible for any 1080p gaming, even some light 1440p gaming, while still being incredibly future-proof. Another thing, this is not a how to build a computer kind of tutorial video. This is more of why I chose the parts I did and why they work for this price range. With that being said, let's jump into the parts I chose for this computer, and then at the end jump into some benchmarks to see how it actually performs when gaming. Starting off with the CPU, the heartbeat of this computer, I wanted to go with something incredibly future-proof that you'd be able to upgrade down the line, which is why I ultimately ended up going for AM5 with the Ryzen 5 7500F. With its 6-core and 12 threads, it is the perfect entry point into AM5. Now, this is the budget king of AM5 processors, coming at around 130 bucks on AliExpress. Now, this is the only product I had to buy on AliExpress, which I was a little bit skeptical about at first, and I'm gonna be honest, the process of buying it was a little interesting. It arrived to my door in literally the clamp shield and a styrofoam bag, but that will obviously vary depending on the seller you get it from. Nevertheless, it does work and is an absolute steal for 130 bucks. Now, because this is a newer gen CPU, that does mean we have to spend a bit more money on DDR5 RAM and the AM5 socket. So I ultimately ended up going with the Gigabyte A620M XAX for the motherboard. This thing goes for about 130 bucks brand new on Amazon and has everything we could possibly want for the price range. We need 4 DIMM slots, built-in Wi-Fi, PCIe Gen 4 baked right in. It does have decent enough VRMs, definitely not as great as you're gonna get on a higher end motherboard. In terms of I/O, it's pretty solid as well in the back, also supporting USB Type-C, which is always great to see. Overall, for 130 bucks, it's a nice looking, very functional board that will also handle any other upgrades you decide to throw in there. For RAM, it is becoming gradually harder and harder to suggest anything under 32 gigabytes nowadays, especially for DDR5, which is why I ultimately ended up going for the Silicon Power Value DDR5 kit. This is a 2x16 32 gigabyte kit, clocked at 6,000 megahertz with a CL timing of 30. For DDR5 RAM, I definitely don't suggest going under 6,000 megahertz, and CL timing of 30 is pretty respectable as well, especially for the price range of this RAM, which is only 79 bucks. Now, since we also got our CPU from AliExpress, there's a pretty low chance that it's going to come with a stock Wraith cooler, whatever AMD decides to give you. So we had to go with a third-party cooler with this, which is kind of an interesting choice for me, since I decided to branch out and get something a little bit different than normal, that being this air cooler from Sama. Now, I don't actually know if I would recommend this cooler even after using it, because the biggest thing that drew me towards it was the infinity design on the side here and on the front of the fan as well. And don't get me wrong, this infinity mirror look is actually a really cool one, and I think it actually pulls it off really well, especially for only 20 bucks. The biggest problem I have with this cooler is it's just not as good at cooling compared to other coolers around this price range, as well as the fan is much louder than the pre-installed fans that came in this case. In this build, it is quite literally the loudest fan, especially if I, give it, stop it real quick. I mean, most if not all the noise from the PC has already stopped. So I can say without a doubt the fan is much louder than I would like it to be, especially, you know, when it starts to ramp up, it can get a bit louder. Now this is without the side panel, so you have to take that into account. With the side panel, you're not going to be able to hear it that much, but it was definitely an interesting experience, especially as I'm testing out new coolers to see what works, what doesn't. No, don't get me wrong, it definitely keeps the CPU cool. It looks great at a $20 price range as well, but if you're looking for something that has a bit more price to performance, I think I'd go with something like the Eddy Cooling SC214 or the Assassin models by Thermalright are pretty sweet as well. Now, for the graphic power behind this build, I ultimately ended up going for the ASRock Challenger RX 6600, which this could be a pretty interesting take because this is an undoubtedly 1080p card. I mean, it has 8 gigabytes of VRAM, which is all right in 2025. It goes for about $200 brand new on Amazon, but it is very clearly a 1080p card, which for $850, I agree, you could definitely squeeze 1440p out of this if you decide to go used. On things like eBay, Facebook Marketplace, like Jawa or something, you could easily find a used RX 6700 XT, RX 5700 XT, even like a 2070 Super for there around that same budget, which will give you more performance, more VRAM, things like that. The biggest reason is because I wanted to go brand new with this, but it is a pretty interesting take, right? This isn't max FPS per dollar kind of computer. Obviously, we did pay some to aesthetics, and I wanted to buy all of these parts brand new as well. If you are looking for max FPS per dollar, you are definitely going to want to look at the used market. And if I was doing something like that, I also would not have gone with AM5. The reason I went with AM5 is to further future-proof this build so that we can swap out a better graphics card in the future, a much better CPU in the future without having to switch things like our RAM and motherboard just because our, you know, DDR4 motherboard doesn't support it. This motherboard already has DDR5, it already has AM5, all right? It is ready for any upgrades that you throw at it down the line. So it definitely has a lot of upgrade potential to it, but for that we are sacrificing potential 1440p performance. Not to say the RX 6600 is a bad choice, it's absolutely not, and pairs beautifully with the Ryzen 5 7500F with little to no bottleneck whatsoever in 1080p gaming. I also understand that the Challenger models of cards do get a bit of hate, and I was originally going to go with a model by Power Color, but by the time I bought these parts, that one was unfortunately out of stock, so instead I did have to go with this ASRock model, which it's alright. I didn't have a horrible experience with it or anything, just aesthetically I think there are better options. I mean, it does have a pretty small backplate with like half the other heatsink exposed. It is a dual slot card as well, dual fan too, which is pretty standard for it. I think the 6600 by Power Color would be a lot more aesthetically pleasing. I will have both linked in the description below, so you can end up deciding which one you want to go with. In terms of storage, there are a lot of really great budget options floating around brand new on Amazon, but for me, I decided to go with the Clevcraft C910. Now, this is a drive that I haven't actually worked with in the past, but after building with it, I honestly have no complaints. I mean, for $50, you're getting a terabyte of storage, Gen 4 NVMe speeds, and even a pretty clean heatsink to go along with it. Comparing it to other price ranges and models at the moment, I think this is definitely one of the most solid options you can go with at this point in time. Powering this entire build is a PSU that I've personally been really excited to use, that being the MSI Meg A650BN. That's basically just been titled the Budget King of power supplies for budget to mid-range builds. It is ranked tier C on the PSU tier list, is 80 plus bronze certified, and overall just a pretty solid option that I can imagine definitely using again for future builds. Do note that it is also modular, so all the cables are connected to the power supply, so cable management might be a bit more difficult, just keep that in mind. But honestly, for $70, you really can't get any better than this, and I think it's a super solid option, one that I would definitely suggest. And finally, for the case, this is one that I've actually been really excited to use, and actually one that I did make a full long-form video on if you want to check that out. And this, the Okanos Aqua 3. And for $65 brand new on Amazon, you're getting a super clean fish tank design with onboard USB Type-C, 3 pre-installed ARGB fans, and even an RGB controller in the back. Again, I did talk about this case a lot more in depth in my previous video, but overall I had a very pleasant experience building in it, really just no complaints whatsoever. The entire build took me under 2 hours. I had plenty of room for cables, though again, we're working with a modular power supply, so you kind of just have to cram cables in there at some point in time, but really no complaints whatsoever. And another thing that definitely isn't necessary, but for $20 I absolutely recommend doing it, and that's adding cable extensions to the build. Honestly, they just elevate the look of the build so much, and for me, I decided to go with an all-black kit by Asia Horse. Honestly, Asia Horse has kind of just been my go-to right now. They're pretty budget friendly, they have a nice selection of colors and cable clones that honestly just make the build look so much better, especially compared to using something like the PSU cables themselves. Every build on this channel so far has had cable extensions. I highly suggest using them. I will have these extensions as well as all the other parts I use for this build linked in the description below, as well as some alternatives that I would suggest for either the cooler or the graphics card if you're interested in looking at those as well. Now, aside the initial parts list, we obviously do still need to activate Windows. And I'm sorry, if you're paying full price for a Windows key from Microsoft themselves, you are doing it wrong, okay? And this isn't a sponsored segment or anything, but there are so many other sellers and websites that sell Windows activation keys for just much cheaper. Basically, if you check out a bunch of different YouTubers online, a ton of them are sponsored by these different websites. I mean, there's a plethora to choose from. You have VIPyourCDKey.com, which is, I don't know, it's the one that I use. It's the one I've been using. I don't like giving my card information out to more than one. But aside from that, you also have like KeysFam, GVG Mall, Super CDK. I mean, I could keep going. There's a ton of them. But for the one I personally use, again, it's called VIP-yourCDKey.com. Again, not sponsored, please. It's not. It's just the one that I use, okay? You can get Windows 10 for about 15 to 16 bucks with a promo code, which again, a lot of YouTubers have promo codes, okay? And Windows 11 for about 23 bucks. Also, once you get that product key, activating Windows just couldn't be simpler. Go to your activation settings and click change product key, and they just want to paste in that key, activate Windows next, and boom, Windows is activated. I want to rephrase one more time. I am not sponsored by any of those websites, but it's just personally what I suggest. And as a PC builder, I really cannot bring myself to tell you guys to buy full price from Microsoft. You're honestly wasting money doing that. So please do yourself a favor and check out one of these third-party websites. I haven't had any issues buying from the one that I do. So again, if you want to check it out, I will have one of the websites linked into the description below. I know this cooler definitely isn't as good as other options for the price, but for 20 bucks, that infinity mirror design is actually really sick. It might justify it. I don't know. Leave in the comments down below what you guys think. Now, of course, we have to talk about the benchmarks and how this computer actually performs in gaming. Starting out with Fortnite in performance mode, all medium settings, this title is definitely more CPU intensive with these kind of settings, but the 7500F is throwing out some great numbers, hovering around the 165 mark, even getting around 200 FPS, and besides some minor internet stutters on my part, the game was more than playable and overall handled great with this system. Jumping into CS2, all high settings, throughout all my testing, we averaged well over 180 FPS, but in the footage you're seeing now, we are getting even higher than that. In Hitman 3, all medium settings, we are averaging around 150 FPS, and during all this testing, the temperatures are staying incredibly encouraging, hovering around 60 degrees for both the CPU and GPU. Overwatch 2 is another esports title, pretty easy to run, and we're averaging over 200 FPS in all high settings for this game. Now in Delta Force, with the medium preset, we are averaging anywhere from 100 to about 185 FPS, but it also really depends on the intensity of the scenario you're in, how much you're rendering at once. That'll basically determine how the FPS fluctuates, but that goes for all games that you play. Here's a list of all the other games I tested, and as you can see, the PC performed exceptionally well, getting much over 150 FPS for most, if not all, of the titles I put it through. Again, all of these games were tested in 1080p medium to high settings. I also stress tested the GPU in firmware for about a half hour, and it barely even broke 60 degrees Celsius. Additionally, I ran the CPU through a multi-threaded stress test using Cinebench. In terms of temperatures, it was getting around the 78 degrees Celsius on the high end, but didn't break 80 degrees Celsius, which is nice to see. In terms of gaming, the temperatures did stay pretty similar to that. I mean, the GPU was absolutely fine, and the CPU did get a bit toastier, but I don't think it broke 80 at any one point in time. Outside this one CPU fan, all the other pre-installed fans are super quiet, and even with the side panel on, you won't be able to hear it as much. I don't think sound is that big of an issue, but again, the one fan kind of ruins it all a little bit. Aside from that, this PC met all my expectations, blowing away any game I threw at it in 1080p, as well as being incredibly future-proof. I mean, this thing should last you for multiple years and multiple upgrades in the future. If you guys have any suggestions, comments, concerns, leave them in the comment section down below. Again, all the parts are linked in the description, as well as some CD keys that I recommend. Of course, if you guys did enjoy this video, then please do consider leaving it a thumbs up, because that helps me out a ton with the YouTube algorithm and stuff. Also consider subscribing, because I have a lot more planned for 2025. And aside from that, if you want to see a much more in-depth video on this PC case, I have that right here, and I'll catch you on the next one.